I still don't understand why you refuse to buy a better car, my best friend, Ethan, said as he looked at my old sedan. I laughed. Because this one still runs. You can afford something nicer. I don't need something nicer. Ethan shook his head. You're the strangest man I know. Maybe, he smiled. Or maybe you're smarter than the rest of us. I smiled back but stayed quiet. Very few people knew the truth about me. My family came from old money, but my parents taught me never to depend on it. I built my own career, rented a simple apartment, drove an old car, and never used my family name to open doors. Only one person mattered to me more than any fortune. Her name was Charlotte. For 3 years, I loved her with all my heart. She was young, brilliant, and already the CEO of a fast-growing company. Everyone admired her confidence, but I loved the quiet moments nobody else ever saw. You always work too much, I told her one evening. She smiled across the dinner table. I'm building our future. Our future. Of course. She reached across the table and held my hand. Money comes and goes. Love stays. You really believe that? I do. You'd still love me if I lost everything? She squeezed my fingers. I'd choose you every single time. Her answer stayed inside my heart long after that dinner ended. Every morning, I remembered those words. Every night, I believed them even more. A week later, Ethan found me staring into a jewelry store window. He crossed his arms. So, you're buying the ring, aren't you? I looked at the display and nodded. I think it's time. He grinned. I've been waiting to hear that. I've saved for months. You nervous? Terrified? That's normal. What if she says no? Ethan laughed. Charlotte practically looks at you like you're already her husband. I hope you're right. He patted my shoulder. I know I'm right. I walked into the store carrying equal parts excitement and fear. When the jeweler placed the ring in my hand, my heart started racing. This is beautiful, I whispered. It represents forever, the jeweler replied. I smiled. Forever. That was all I wanted with Charlotte. Nothing more, nothing less. The ring stayed inside my jacket pocket as I walked home. My landlord, Mr. Harris, was watering flowers outside the building. Good evening, he called. Evening. He noticed my smile. Something good happened? I bought an engagement ring. His eyes lit up. So you're finally asking her. I hope she'll say yes. He chuckled. If she's wise, she won't hesitate. I think she loves me. He leaned on the watering can. Love is easy during peaceful days. What do you mean? A person's real heart appears when life becomes difficult. I don't think Charlotte would ever leave me. I hope you're right. I know I am. He smiled kindly. I'll pray for your happiness. Thank you. That night, I couldn't stop imagining our future. I pictured a small wedding. I pictured a home filled with laughter. Most of all, I pictured Charlotte standing beside me through every season of life. The next afternoon, she called. Hey, I answered happily. Can we meet tonight? Of course. I've booked a table at the Grand Monarch Hotel. I blinked. The Grand Monarch? That's expensive. I know. Are we celebrating something? There was a short silence. I have something important to tell you. I smiled without thinking. I was planning to tell you something important too. You were. Yes. She laughed softly. Then tonight will be interesting. I can't wait to see you. I'll be there at 7. I'll be there before you. Don't be late. I won't. The call ended. I pulled the ring from my pocket and opened the small box again. The diamond reflected the afternoon sunlight. This is it, I whispered. After work, I put on my best suit. Ethan called as I adjusted my tie. You sound nervous. I am. You've got this. I hope so. Call me after she says yes. I laughed. I will. I slipped the ring into my pocket, locked my apartment, and started driving toward the Grand Monarch Hotel. Every traffic light felt too long. Every mile felt endless. I kept hearing Charlotte's words inside my head. Money comes and goes. Love stays. I believed them with every beat of my heart. As the hotel came into view, I smiled, completely unaware that I was walking toward the moment that would shatter everything I believed about love, trust, and my future forever. I stepped inside the Grand Monarch Hotel with my heart racing. Charlotte was already waiting near the private dining room. She looked beautiful in a white dress, but something felt different. She didn't smile. I walked toward her. "Sorry, I'm a little early," I said. "You're on time. I brought something for you." "I know." Her calm voice made me uneasy. "Charlotte, is everything okay?" She took a slow breath. "Please sit down." I pulled out the chair. "You're making me nervous. I need to tell you something." I smiled, trying to lighten the mood. "Me first." She slowly shook her head. "No, I have to go first." My fingers touched the ring box inside my pocket. "Okay." She looked into my eyes without showing any emotion. "I'm getting married." I laughed nervously. "Very funny." "I'm serious." My smile disappeared. "What?" "I'm getting married next month." I stared at her. "Charlotte, we're supposed to get married." "We were." "What changed?" She folded her hands together. "My future. Our future." "No." She looked away. "My future." I felt my heartbeat growing louder. "I don't understand." "You will." She pointed toward the entrance. A tall man with gray hair walked into the room wearing an expensive suit and a confident smile. He stopped beside our table. "Charlotte." She stood. He kissed her hand. Then she turned toward me. "This is Victor Blackwood." I slowly stood. "The investor?" "Yes." Victor smiled politely. "I've heard a great deal about you." I couldn't answer. Charlotte took another deep breath. "I'm marrying Victor." The words crashed into me. "You can't be serious." "I am." "What about us?" She remained silent. "What about everything you promised me?" "I meant it at the time." "At the time?" "I've made a different decision." I shook my head. "No. Tell me this is a joke." "It isn't." "Did I do something wrong?" "No." "Then why?" She finally looked directly at me. "Because love doesn't build security." I felt my chest tighten. "What does that mean?" "It means I want stability. I work every day." "I know. I've never stopped trying." "I know. I love you." She closed her eyes briefly. "I know." "Then why are you doing this?" She opened her purse, removed the apartment key I had given her, and placed it on the table beside me. "I've chosen a different life." Everything inside me began breaking apart before I even realized my world had already started collapsing. "I don't understand," I whispered. Charlotte reached into her purse again and placed my engagement ring on the table. "I found this when you accidentally left your jacket at my apartment." I stared at the small box. "I was going to ask you tonight." "I know." "You knew." "I guessed." "Then why didn't you stop me before now?" "Because I wasn't ready." I swallowed hard. "So this is really goodbye?" "Yes." I looked at Victor. "Is money all that matters?" Charlotte answered before he could speak. "Money brings safety. Love cannot pay bills. I would have spent my whole life building one with you. I don't want to wait anymore." Victor finally spoke. "I hope there are no hard feelings." I looked at him. "You already won. Don't pretend to feel sorry for me." He offered his hand. "I wish you success." His smile felt cold. I shook his hand anyway. His grip was firm, almost victorious. "I appreciate your maturity," he said. I pulled my hand away. "You don't know anything about me." Charlotte quietly picked up her purse. "I'm sorry." "No," I replied. "You're not." She lowered her eyes but said nothing. I placed the ring back into my pocket. "I hope your new life gives you everything you wanted." Without waiting for an answer, I walked toward the exit. Every step felt heavier than the last. Outside, the cold night air hit my face. Couldn't breathe. I sat inside my old car and stared through the windshield. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I declined the call. A second later it rang again. Unknown number. I rejected it once more. Then a voicemail notification appeared. I ignored it. Nothing mattered anymore. When I reached my apartment, I dropped onto the couch without turning on the lights. I kept hearing her voice. Money brings safety. Love cannot pay bills. Were 3 years worth so little? I whispered into the darkness. No one answered. My phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. Then another call. Then another. Finally, a text message appeared. This is Jonathan Reed, your family's attorney. Please contact me immediately regarding an urgent matter involving your grandfather's estate. Asterisk asterisk. I stared at the screen for a second before locking my phone again. I didn't care about lawyers. I didn't care about business. I didn't care about anything. The only thing filling my heart was the painful question I could not escape. If the woman I loved believed I was never enough, maybe she was right. Maybe I had never been enough for anyone. I didn't answer the phone for 2 days. Ethan kept knocking on my door. Bro, open up. I know you're in there. I'm fine, I shouted back. No, you're not. I didn't reply. On the 3rd day, I finally opened the door. Ethan looked at me and frowned. You look like you haven't slept. I don't need sleep. Don't do that. Talk to me. There's nothing to talk about. He stepped inside anyway. Did she really leave you? I laughed once. Empty. She didn't just leave me. She replaced me. Ethan sat down. That's cold. Yeah. He leaned forward. Look at me. You're better than this. I shook my head. Am I? Because right now I don't feel like it. Before he could answer, my phone started ringing again. Unknown number. I ignored it. Ethan glanced at it. You should pick that up. It's nothing. It's been calling you for days. I said no. The phone stopped. Silence filled the room. Then a knock came at the door. Strong. Confident. Ethan stood up first. Are you expecting someone? No. Another knock. I opened the door slightly. A man in a black suit stood there holding a leather folder. Mr. Adrian Cole? That's me. I'm Jonathan Reed. The same name I had ignored. I told you I don't want anything, I said. He didn't move. I'm not here to sell anything. Then leave. I'm your family attorney. I froze. Ethan looked between us. Family attorney? I frowned. I don't have family lawyers. Jonathan stepped forward slightly. You do now. I opened the door wider. Say what you want fast. He nodded. May I come in? I hesitated. Ethan whispered. Let him speak. I stepped aside. Jonathan sat down calmly. I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. I was busy. With what? I didn't answer. He opened the folder. I'm here regarding your grandfather's estate. I laughed again. I think you have the wrong person. No. He slid a document across the table. I didn't touch it. My grandfather is dead. Jonathan nodded. And he left everything to you. I stared at him, waiting for a joke that never came. You're lying, I said. Jonathan shook his head. I wish I was. Ethan leaned in. This is insane. What are you talking about? Jonathan opened the folder again. Your grandfather, Richard Cole, passed away last month. I whispered. I don't even remember him. Jonathan replied. He remembered you every day. I frowned. I don't understand. He slid another paper. He built Cole Dominion Group. Ethan blinked. Wait, that company? Jonathan nodded. Yes. I said, that's a global corporation. Jonathan. And you are the sole heir. I stood up. No, I don't want it. Silence. Jonathan. He predicted that. I laughed bitterly. Then he should have known I'd say no. Jonathan. He left a letter. He handed it. I opened it. The letter felt heavier than paper. I read it slowly. Adrian. If you are reading this, I am already gone. Jonathan said. He wrote that for you specifically. Ethan whispered. This is getting wild. I said. Keep reading. He wanted you to stay humble. I swallowed. This doesn't make sense. Jonathan. It will. Everything you ignored belongs to you now. I stepped back. No, I can't do this. A voice came from behind me. A voice came from behind me. I turned. A woman stood there in a sharp suit. "I'm Claire Morgan, senior board member," she said. "Your grandfather trusted me to guide you." I said, "I don't want guidance. I want answers." Claire replied, "Then start by accepting the truth. Jonathan, we need your decision." I looked at them both. "I don't want revenge anymore," I whispered. "I want control." Claire said, "Then it's time." I closed my eyes, and for the first time I said yes. "Take me to where I need to be." Jonathan stood up immediately. "Tomorrow your new life begins." Claire added, "And your old one ends." I looked at the letter again in my hands. "This changes everything," I said softly. Jonathan replied, "It was meant to." I whispered, "Then I'm ready." Ethan looked at me in shock. "Bro, what are you saying?" I didn't look away. "I'm saying I accept everything." Jonathan smiled for the first time. Claire nodded. "Good." I felt something shift inside me. Not revenge. Something stronger. Power. And I finally understood who I was. I was not just someone she left behind. I was the one everything belonged to. And now I would decide what happens next. No more waiting. No more begging for love. Only what I build. I stood as everything inside me changed forever. The man I was died in silence. Again now. Months passed, and I worked harder than I ever had before. Every morning I said to myself, "I will not break." Every night I told myself, "I will not fall." My executive trainer looked at me one day and said, "You don't rest at all, do you?" I replied, "Rest is for people who already succeeded." He laughed softly. "Or for people who want to survive." I said, "I'm doing both." He nodded. "Good answer." Another day, Claire Morgan said to me, "You are changing faster than we expected." I asked, "Is that good or bad?" She replied, "It is dangerous." I frowned. "Dangerous for who?" "For everyone who will compete with you." I stayed quiet after that. Weeks later, I stood in front of a mirror in a hotel room. Ethan called me. He said, "Bro, you sound different now." I said, "People had to change me." He asked, "Are you okay?" I answered, "I am becoming better than okay." He paused. "That sounds scary." I said, "Maybe it is." The day of the International Business Conference arrived. I walked into the building and heard people whispering. Someone said, "That's him." Another voice said, "The new Cole Dominion heir." I said to myself, "Stay calm." A man at the entrance smiled and said, "Welcome, sir, I am the conference host." He added, "We are honored to have you here." I replied, "I didn't come for honor. I came for answers." He smiled nervously and said, "You will receive them." A journalist stopped me and said, "May I ask you a question?" I said, "Make it fast." She asked, "How does it feel becoming one of the youngest leaders in global business?" I said, "It feels like waking up from a life I didn't choose." She looked surprised and said, "That is very honest." I said, "I don't have time for lies anymore." I walked toward the main hall and heard my name being announced. The conference host said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our keynote guest." I stepped on stage. People stood and applauded. The journalist whispered, "He is even younger than expected." The host said, "And already more powerful than most." I thought, this is only the beginning. I looked across the room and felt something shift inside me. I said to myself, everything is about to change again. The moment I saw my name on that stage, I knew my old life was gone. I heard the host say, "This man will redefine the future of global business." And I whispered, "Then let them all remember my name." People stood shocked, watching me step forward into a life I never imagined before everything changed forever again now. I looked at the crowd from the stage, feeling their eyes on me. Then I saw her, Charlotte. She was sitting near the front row, wearing a professional black dress, holding a company badge. For a moment, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But then she looked up. Our eyes met. She froze. I whispered to myself, "This can't be real." The host continued speaking, but I couldn't hear him anymore. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. Charlotte stood slowly. I saw her lips move. She said, "Adrian," but I didn't answer. The journalist beside her whispered, "You know him?" Charlotte nodded slightly, but she looked shaken. I stepped back from the microphone for a second and said quietly to the host, "Continue without me." The host asked, "Is everything all right, sir?" I replied, "Yes, I just need a moment." I walked off the stage. Security started to follow, but I raised my hand. I said I'm fine. I moved toward the side hallway. Footsteps came behind me. "Adrian, wait." I stopped, but I didn't turn around. She said again, "Please." Her voice cracked. I finally turned. She looked at me like she had seen a ghost. "I didn't know you were here," she said. I answered, "You didn't know a lot of things about me." She swallowed hard. "Adrian, we need to talk." I said, "We already did. Remember?" She stepped closer. "That was before I knew." "Before you knew what?" I interrupted. "Before I knew who you became." I looked at her and said, "I didn't become anything. I was always this person. You just never saw it." She shook her head. "That's not fair." I replied, "Fair? You left me in a hotel room like I was nothing." Her eyes filled with tears. "I made a mistake." I said, "People don't call it a mistake when they replace someone with a billionaire." She whispered, "I didn't know I would regret it this much." I stepped back. "Regret doesn't rewrite history." She reached out, but I moved away. From behind, I heard the journalist whisper to someone, "Is that his ex-girlfriend?" The conference host appeared at the end of the hallway and said, "Sir, we need you back on stage." I looked at Charlotte one last time. "I have nothing left to say to you." She said, "Please don't leave like this." I answered, "You already left me first." Then I walked away without looking back. Behind me, I heard her voice break completely, but I didn't stop, because the man she lost was gone now, and the man I became didn't belong to her world anymore. News spread faster than I expected. Everywhere I went, people whispered my name. I heard he inherited a global empire. No, he is one of the youngest billionaires now. I heard it in cafes, offices, even on the street. Ethan called me one morning. He said, "Bro, I can't even recognize your life anymore." I replied, "Neither can I." He laughed nervously. "So what now? You just rule the world." I said, "I don't rule anything yet. I'm still learning." He said, "That doesn't sound like the guy I knew." I answered, "That guy doesn't exist anymore." Silence came through the phone. Then he said, "Is it making you happy?" I paused. "I don't know yet." After I hung up, Claire Morgan walked into my office. She said, "Your public attention is increasing every day." I replied, "I didn't ask for attention." She said, "But you will get it anyway." I leaned back. "What about the company?" She answered, "It's stabilizing under your name." I asked, "And the people who doubt me?" She smiled slightly. "They will stop doubting soon." That same week, I got a message from an unknown number. "Adrian, please talk to me." I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, "Who is this?" The reply came quickly. "It's me, Charlotte." I didn't answer. Another message came. "I know I have no right to contact you." Still, I stayed silent. Then she sent another message. "I made a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life." I whispered to myself, "Everyone says that after they lose something." Ethan came over that night. He said, "You look distracted." I said, "I'm fine." He sat down. "Is it her?" I didn't reply. He said, "Bro, be careful. People like that only come back when they lose everything." I looked at him. "She already lost me once." He nodded. "Then don't let her lose you again." The next morning, Claire placed a file on my desk. She said, "You need to see this." I opened it. Inside were reports about Charlotte's husband, Victor Blackwood. I frowned. "What is this?" Claire replied, "Not everything about him is clean." I said, "Explain." She said, He has been under financial investigation for months. I looked up. Why am I seeing this now? She answered, because you are now connected to his business network. I closed the file slowly. So my past and present are colliding now. Claire said, yes. I sat back in my chair, staring at the file. So you're telling me he's dangerous? I said. Claire replied, I'm telling you he is not what the world thinks. I asked, and Charlotte? She hesitated. She is tied to him now, legally and financially. I whispered, she chose him. Claire said, she didn't fully understand what she was choosing. I laughed once. That sounds familiar. She looked at me carefully. You still care? I answered, I care about truth, not mistakes. That night I couldn't sleep. Charlotte's messages kept appearing. Please, Adrian. I need to talk. I don't have anyone else. I finally typed, you had a choice. Her reply came instantly. I know. Then another message. But I didn't know who he really was. I stared at my screen. Ethan called me. He said, bro, I saw the news. I asked, what news? He replied, that billionaire guy, Victor. There are rumors he's under investigation. I said, I already know. Ethan said, and Charlotte is still with him? I answered, I don't know anymore. He said, be careful. This sounds messy. I replied, my life has been messy since the day she left. The next morning, Claire entered again. She said, there is something else. I asked, more problems. She placed another document on my desk. This is leaked internal footage. I opened it. A video showed Victor shouting at employees in a boardroom. He slammed the table. Do you think I built this company for respect? I built it for control. I looked at Claire. This is what she married into? Claire replied, yes. I leaned back slowly. So she traded me for this. Claire said softly, people often confuse power with safety. I whispered, and she thought she was choosing safety. Later that day, another message came from Charlotte. Adrian, I saw the reports. I didn't know everything was like this. I feel trapped. I replied, then leave. Her answer came after a long pause. I can't. I froze. What do you mean you can't? She sent another message. He controls everything now, my company, my accounts, even my image. I stood up from my chair. Claire looked at me. What happened? I said, she's not just regretting now. Claire asked, what will you do? I stared at the screen. Part of me wanted to ignore her forever. Another part remembered everything we once had. I said quietly, I don't know yet, but deep inside, I knew something was coming. Not revenge, not forgiveness, something heavier than both. And for the first time since she left me, I wasn't just the one who was hurt anymore. I was the one who might decide what happens next. The first call came early in the morning. Claire entered my office without knocking. She said, we have a situation. I looked up. What kind of situation? She replied, federal investigators. I paused. Why? She placed a file on my desk. Fraud investigation, connected to Victor Blackwood's companies. I leaned back slowly. So it's finally happening. Claire said, whistleblowers came forward. I asked, and we are involved? She nodded. One of the subsidiaries we acquired last month was part of his network. I rubbed my forehead. So my company is now inside his mess. Claire said, yes. I stood up. Bring the legal team. She replied, already done. That afternoon, a man in a gray suit entered my office. He said, Mr. Cole. I answered, that's me. He introduced himself. I am Special Investigator Daniel Hayes. I said, sit. He sat down and opened his folder. He said, we need full cooperation from your company. I replied, you will get it. He looked at me carefully. No resistance? I said, I don't protect criminals. Claire glanced at me but said nothing. The investigator asked, Did you know about Victor Blackwood's activities before this? I answered, no. He wrote something down. Then he said, good. That helps your position. Later that evening, Ethan called me. He said, bro, the news is crazy right now. I asked, what news? He said, Victor Blackwood is under federal investigation. I replied, I know. He paused. And Charlotte? I didn't answer immediately. Then I said, she's still connected to him. Ethan said, this is getting dangerous. I replied, everything about him already was dangerous. That night, my phone buzzed again. Charlotte. Adrian, please. I need help. I stared at the screen. Ethan's words echoed in my head. Don't get pulled back in. I typed, I can't help you if you stay with him. She replied instantly, I'm trapped. I closed my eyes. Then I deleted the message without replying. But my hand froze before I could lock the phone. Because I knew something was wrong. Not just business. Not just money. Something deeper was breaking. The next morning, Claire entered my office again. But this time her expression was different. She said, there is something you need to hear. I asked, more problems? She replied, Charlotte came forward. I froze. What do you mean? Claire placed another file on the desk. She requested a private meeting with investigators. I said, why now? Claire answered, because she says she was misled. I leaned forward. By who? Claire hesitated. Victor. A knock came at the door before I could respond. The investigator from yesterday stepped in again. He said, we got a statement from Ms. Charlotte Reed. I corrected him. Blackwood. He nodded. She is still legally married. Silence filled the room. He continued, she admitted she was pressured into financial decisions she didn't fully understand. I whispered, so she finally spoke. Claire said softly, she is trying to protect herself. I replied, or save what's left of her name. The investigator looked at me. She also mentioned your name. I frowned. What did she say? He opened his notes. She said you were the only person who never lied to her. I laughed bitterly. That's ironic. Claire said, do you want to respond to her statement? I shook my head. No. The investigator stood up. One more thing. We may need your testimony if this escalates. I replied, you'll get it. After they left, Ethan called me again. He said, bro, the internet is exploding right now. I asked, about what? He said, Charlotte is trending everywhere. I closed my eyes. He continued, people are calling her a victim now. I said, and what do they call me? Ethan paused. They don't know what to call you. That night, Charlotte sent another message. Adrian, please talk to me. I know I hurt you, but I need to tell you everything. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I finally typed, why should I believe anything you say now? Her reply came slowly. Because I was scared. I frowned. Scared of what? She answered, being poor again. I stopped breathing for a second. She continued, my family lost everything when I was young. I promised myself I would never go back to that life. I lowered my phone slightly. For the first time, I didn't feel only anger. I felt something complicated. She sent one last message. I didn't choose him because I loved him. I chose him because I was afraid of surviving without money. I whispered to myself, so that's the truth. Ethan called again, but I didn't answer. Claire watched me carefully and said, what will you do now? I looked at the screen one last time, and I finally said, now I understand her. Then I added quietly, but understanding doesn't undo what she did. I locked my phone, and for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about fear, power, and the cost of both. The news broke early in the morning. Ethan called me first. He shouted, bro, turn on the news right now. I asked, why? He said, Victor Blackwood is arrested. I froze. What? He replied, federal agents took him last night. I turned on the TV immediately. The reporter said, Billionaire Victor Blackwood has been taken into custody following overwhelming evidence of fraud and financial manipulation. I leaned closer. The screen showed flashing lights, cameras, and a man being escorted out. Ethan said over the phone, "This is insane." I replied quietly, "So it's real." He asked, "What happens now?" I didn't answer. The reporter continued, "Multiple investors have withdrawn support from Blackwood Holdings." Ethan said, "His empire is collapsing." I whispered, "Fast." Later that day, Claire entered my office. She said, "The board at Blackwood's company is in emergency session." I asked, "And Charlotte?" Claire replied, "She's been removed." I looked up. "Removed?" She nodded. "They voted her out this morning." I leaned back slowly. "So she lost everything." Claire said, "Her leadership was tied to him. They no longer trust her judgment." I stayed silent for a moment. Then I said, "I didn't even have to do anything." Claire replied, "Sometimes you don't." That afternoon, I saw her for the first time outside my building. Charlotte was standing alone. No bodyguards, no luxury car, no confidence, just her. She looked up as I stepped out. "Adrian," she said. I stopped but didn't speak. She walked closer. "Please, just 5 minutes." I said, "You came all the way here for 5 minutes?" She nodded quickly. "I just need to explain." I replied, "Everything already explained itself." She shook her head. "No, not everything." I sighed. "Say it then." Her voice trembled. "I lost my position." I said, "I know." She added, "I lost everything." I looked at her carefully. "And now," she swallowed hard, "I have nothing left but the truth." I stayed quiet. Then she said, "Can we talk somewhere private?" I hesitated. Ethan's voice echoed in my mind. "Be careful." But something inside me said, "Hear her once." I finally replied, 5 minutes." We went inside the quiet lobby corner. Charlotte stood in front of me, hands shaking. She said, "I never thought it would end like this." I replied, "None of us do." She looked down. "I lost everything, Adrian." I said, "You already said that." Her eyes filled with tears. "But you don't understand what it feels like." I leaned back slightly. "Try me." She took a shaky breath. "I thought I was making the safest choice." I said, "You chose him over me." She nodded slowly. "I know." Silence stretched between us. Then she whispered, "I loved you." I didn't respond. She quickly added, "I really did." I asked, "Did you?" She looked up. "Yes. But I was scared more than I was in love." I said, "That's the part one finally understand." She blinked. "You do." I replied, "Fear makes people do honest things in dishonest ways." Her tears fell faster. "I didn't want to lose everything again." I said, "So you made me the thing you could lose." She covered her mouth. "I didn't see it that way." I stepped closer. "But that's what it was." She whispered, "I regret it every day." I nodded slowly. "I believe you." She looked surprised. "You do." I said, "Karma already did what I would have done." She frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" I answered, "It means I don't feel the need to punish you anymore." Her voice broke. "So you hate me less now?" I shook my head. "I don't hate you." She whispered, "Then what do you feel?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Nothing you can fix." That hit her harder than anger ever could. She stepped back. "I lost you completely, didn't I?" I said quietly. "You lost the version of me who would have stayed no matter what." She cried silently now. "I wish I could go back." I replied, "Everyone wishes that when consequences arrive." She wiped her face. "Is there any chance? Even a small one?" I answered honestly, "No." She closed her eyes. "Then I deserve this." I said, "You don't deserve pain. You just chose a path that led here." A long silence followed. She nodded once. "Thank you for saying that." I turned to leave. Before I walked away, she said softly, "Adrian." I stopped. She whispered, Did you ever stop loving me? I paused for a second. Then I said, I stopped waiting for you. And I walked out without looking back. Outside, the air felt lighter, not because I won, but because I finally understood something simple. Karma didn't need my help anymore. I stood in front of my grandfather's grave without saying anything for a long time. The wind was quiet, almost like it was waiting for me. Ethan stood beside me and said softly, So this is him. I nodded. Yeah. He looked at the stone. The man who changed everything for you, I replied, without ever meeting me properly. Ethan asked, Do you ever feel angry at him? I shook my head. No. I feel confused, but not angry. He said, That's rare. I crouched down and placed flowers on the grave. I whispered, I finally understand what you were trying to do. Ethan asked, What do you mean? I said, He wanted me to find myself without money first. He replied, And did you? I stood up slowly. I think I did. The hard way. Silence stayed for a moment. Then Ethan said, So what now? You're one of the most powerful people in the country. I looked at him. I don't feel powerful. He frowned. Why? I said, Because power without direction is just noise. Later that week, I sat in a meeting with Claire. She said, The company is expanding faster than expected. I replied, Then slow it down. She looked surprised. Why would we slow it down? I said, Because I want purpose, not just growth. She leaned back. That's not how most CEOs think. I answered, Then I guess I'm not most CEOs. She smiled slightly. Your grandfather would have liked that answer. I paused. Do you think I'm doing this right? She said, You're not copying anyone. That already makes you right. I nodded slowly. After the meeting, I walked outside and saw a group of young entrepreneurs waiting. One of them stepped forward and said, Are you really Adrian Cole? I said, Depends who's asking. He laughed nervously. We heard you help startups now. I replied, I try. Another asked, Why? I thought for a moment. Because someone once believed in me when I had nothing to offer. They looked confused. I added, So I'm paying that forward. Ethan smiled beside me. That sounds like you finally grew up. I said, No, I just stopped running after things that don't matter. Later that night, Claire came to my office again. She said quietly, She left the city. I looked up. Charlotte. She nodded. She's trying to rebuild her life somewhere smaller. I said, Good. Claire studied my face. That's all you feel? I answered, That's all there needs to be. Claire stayed in my office for a moment, then asked softly, Do you ever think about going back? I looked at her. Going back where? To how things were before all of this. I shook my head. No. That version of me doesn't exist anymore. She nodded slowly. That's what your grandfather wanted. I asked, You really think so? She replied, I know so. I leaned back in my chair. For a long time, I thought losing her was the worst thing that happened to me. Claire said, And now? I answered, Now I think it was the thing that forced me to wake up. She smiled slightly. That sounds like growth. I said, It feels like survival that turned into something better. Ethan walked in and dropped into the chair. He said, Bro, people are saying you changed the entire industry. I replied, I didn't change anything alone. He laughed. That's not what the internet says. I stood up and looked out the window. I don't care what the internet says anymore. Ethan asked, So what do you care about? I paused. Building things that last longer than attention. Claire added, That's rare for someone your age. I said, Maybe I just got tired of chasing empty things. A few days later, I visited a small startup incubator. A young founder asked me, Do you ever miss your old life? I thought for a moment. I miss the innocence, not the ignorance. He asked, What's the difference? I replied, One is peaceful. The other is dangerous. He nodded like he understood. Later that night, I stood alone on the rooftop of my office building. The city was loud below me, but I felt quiet inside. I whispered to myself, this is what I was meant to become. Ethan joined me and said, you look different now. I smiled slightly. I feel different. He asked, better. I looked at the skyline. Real. A message appeared on my phone that night. Unknown number. But I didn't open it. I just turned the screen off. Claire once said, your grandfather wanted you to learn your worth. Now I finally understood what she meant. My worth wasn't in money. It wasn't in revenge. It wasn't even in love that stayed or left. It was in becoming someone who didn't need to be chosen to matter. I looked at the city one last time and said quietly, I'm finally living my life, not reacting to it. And for the first time, I believed it completely. The story didn't end with revenge. It ended with me,